Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Sarah Mayer, and I am pleased to announce our speaker. Before we begin, though, just a couple of housekeeping tips. We will be keeping everyone on mute this evening. However, during the presentation, if you do have any questions that pop up, feel free to use the question and answer function in the top. Well, it'll be in the bottom for you where it says Q&A. You can also post your questions anonymously, and we will handle the questions at the end. If you do have any questions about how to use Zoom or any technical questions, you can feel free to message the panelists in the chat, and I will respond to you regarding your question. So I am very thrilled to introduce Stacy Brookman. And Stacy is going to share with us today about personal stories. So personal stories make your presentations come to life. But what if your stories are tough or embarrassing or slightly hard to share? Stacy comes to us as a resilience and life storytelling expert, and she will advise how anyone can embed tough personal stories to enrich their talk and enhance their audience's engagement. And you will leave with 3 reasons why you should include tough stories, 3 ways to share them, plus actionable strategies to make these stories easier to talk about. And you will even get started on your own stories throughout the webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and stop sharing my screen. So Stacy, I will let you take it away. I'm excited to hear what you have to share.
Thank you so much. And I cannot start my own video, but you actually don't even need to see me. That's perfectly fine. What I am going to do is share my screen. So simply let me know that you can see my face right there in the title, 3 Reasons to Tell Tough Personal Stories. Can everybody see that? Good, perfect. Well, I am just really thrilled to be here, thrilled to be a part of this organization that brings really amazing content to you all. And what I know is that personal stories do make your presentations come to life. However, what if your stories are tough, or they're embarrassing, or they're simply hard to share? And we are going to dig into that right now and share that with folks. So in this webinar, I'm going to show you how to use those tough situations in your past to make your presentations shine. And by the end of our time together, you're going to learn how writing those tough stories and sharing them with others creates a more joy-filled life. So I hope you strap on your seatbelts and let's get going. There's a couple of different reasons why you might be watching this right now. Number 1 is that you're curious and you're excited about digging into your life story to uncover those mysteries and your hard-won wisdom. That could be you. Maybe you're curious and you're interested on how to share. All right, number 2, you want to explore your unique qualities and unleash those stories and emerge resilient and joyful. Wouldn't you like to do that? And reason number 3, maybe you've been through some of that tough stuff and you're just tired of feeling embarrassed. You're tired of feeling, whoops, I went back to slide number 2. That you're just tired of feeling powerless and you're ready to gain confidence and the confidence to share your stories with others. So we're going to talk about 3 reasons why sharing your stories is really important and really good, and then 3 ways how to do that. So stick with us to the end. All right, so tell me, of those 3 reasons, if you're curious, or you want to explore those stories, or you want clarity and confidence, if you will just share in the comments which one, 2, or 3, which one of those resonates the most with you, or maybe you have an option D or 4, something else. So tell us a little bit. I'm going to just put on the chat here. There we go, so I can see it. Fabulous. Colleen says 3, Sarah says 2, and everybody is going to get something amazing from this. So excellent. All right. So whatever your motivation is, I'm really excited for you. I fully support you because this is just telling your life stories. I'm just amazed at how fun this can be, even if they are tough stories. All right. So what about me? I'd love to tell you a little bit about who I am. I've been through hell and I've lived to tell about it. I was married to a sociopath for 10 years, and I didn't realize what that was until I tried to escape that marriage. And at one point in my life, I was just really, really low. What I realized was what I thought was my forever after had turned into a disaster. My life was falling apart all around me. And so, when I looked back, I realized that I had been psychologically and emotionally manipulated, and I just didn't want to see it. And I remember very clearly sitting at a desk and I was paying bills and I was thinking to myself, I don't want my little girls to grow up thinking this is normal. And what I thought was my strength in enduring a tough situation was really acceptance of a very sad way of living. And my 2 sweet little 7 and 9-year-old girls were going to watch this, or they were in the process of watching this emotional abuse that I was in. And by simply observing it, they were at risk of growing up and being abused themselves. And so that was the moment I said no to an abusive relationship, and I stopped crying. I picked up a pen and I started telling my story. Now, I didn't go around telling all kinds of stories to all kinds of people right at the very, very beginning. I just did it for myself. I did it internally. But as I was doing that, I discovered amazing psychological, emotional, and physical benefits of life storytelling. So let's go ahead and dig into that. Oh, I also wanted to share that when I learned this knowledge, the psychological benefits, I wanted to start telling everybody about it. And I started teaching at the local community college. And to get connected with lots of other people, I started producing the Real Life Resilience podcast, where I interview other people and they tell me their stories in a really safe space of life's most difficult trauma. And we'll get into the why here shortly, but it really is amazing and can be absolutely life-changing. What it did for me, it actually helped me use my past tough experiences to make my future self wiser and more resilient. And it can do the same for you. All right, so let's dig into reason number 1. The very first reason to tell your tough stories is because it's healing. So whatever your trauma is, whatever tough things that life has thrown at you, the very first thing that you need to do is acknowledge that you have tough stories and embrace them. So embracing your story means you can begin healing. So here's one thing that I know to be true. Getting those tough stories out of your head can help you heal, period. We all want to live out the best life we can. We want to fulfill our highest and best use and live up to our potential. And so the best way to do that is not to try to forget about those tough times. Dig into them. It's scientifically proven to boost your health. Most people tell you, your mom, your sister, your friends, all that will say, forget about those tough times. The past is in the past. Let it go. And I understand why they think that way. We have been taught as kids to forgive and forget. But you know what? If forgive and forget actually worked, we'd all be feeling great all the time. And that's just not true. When you get those stories out of your head, you gain power over them. They start to lose their hold on you. And clinical research has proven that writing and sharing your painful experiences does boost your psychological, your physical, and your emotional well-being. It actually boosts your immune system. So you've got to embrace your tough life stories in order to heal from them. And by doing so, they lose their power over you. Embracing your story is a really healthy way to heal from any trauma you may have experienced. And I'll tell you this, there's no trauma Olympics. What your trauma is different than anybody else's trauma. When you were living through that tough situation, and it could be as a child, you were more than likely focused on getting through the next moment and finding your way back to yourself. There wasn't time to reflect and analyze the situation. So taking the time now to embrace that story in your past will help you find a new strength or a new characteristic in your life that you wouldn't have known about or developed if you hadn't have lived through your story. You might have discovered that in recounting your story and you're looking at it through older and wiser eyes, you can see new insights into that situation. And here's the thing, each of the discoveries that you make about your story adds a different dimension, helping you to process and move on and healing you from the pain and the sadness and the other traumatic aspects of your story. So embracing your story is a healthy way to deal with the past or the present tough stuff. All right, so you might still be thinking, Stacy, why in the world should I go back and tell about things that are in the past? Good question. It's really important to dig into our past stories because the experiences we've had affect how we operate in the world as an adult. Really, virtually nobody escapes childhood without some sort of emotional trauma. And it doesn't have to be severe abuse or neglect. It could be the death of a favorite pet, a parent's divorce, or even a move out of the city that you were born in, or it could be a million other things that happen in the course of life. And many of these events cause emotional pain that we don't even realize. So when we experience something that's harmed us or someone who's failed us or dashed hopes, this emotional pain causes us to make agreements with ourselves. And at young ages, 5 or 8 or 13 or 16, whenever that emotional pain happens, you start to make those agreements and they sound something like this. I'll never be good enough in school. No one wants to hear what I have to say. Oh yeah, I'm going to mess this up. I'm not lovable, and so much more. And these agreements are internalized. And it's kind of like we almost embed that suffering into our way of living, where it's so normalized that we don't know any other way of thinking. So storytelling and getting that out of your head actually helps to heal those old wounds that you don't even know you have. It helps to make visible those agreements that you've made with yourself that you don't realize you've made. And it brings clarity to your past and your future. Now, therein lies the magic of telling your life stories. It helps you make sense of what's happened. It helps you make your future self wiser and more resilient. And it doesn't matter how far back your tough stories are from or how recent. Going back helps you move forward. Whether you're telling a story 20 years ago or 2 years ago. Now, if you're multitasking right now, I want you to come back to me because I want to know if you are thinking about a pivotal moment in your life, whether it's positive or negative. I'd love to know. I would want you to share in the chat here How would you characterize that story, that pivotal moment in your life? And these don't have to be all tough stories. It could be strange or dramatic or sad or a tragic comedy, a learning opportunity. Maybe I tell mine it's a tragic comedy because sometimes it was so bizarre that you just had to laugh, right? So share in the chat. I would love to know, how would you characterize your story? Would it be a tragic comedy, a drama, an animation, whatever that is? I would love to see how you characterize your story. Pam says heartbreaking. I bet there are lots of lessons in there. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. Karen says a drama. Yes, lots of folks have dramas. Pivotal moment, Colleen says, when I felt that God did not abandon me. Oh, I love that one. A roller coaster, Sarah says. There are so many different ways that you can tell your story and just get that out and understand it. So I love that. Thank you for sharing, guys. So this is one of my students, and what she says is she was surprised to discover how strong she really was. She said, I have a lot more to learn and explore in my stories, which excites me to no end. So that's the thrilling thing. When you dig into these stories and you start to heal, it gets you excited, even though they're tough stories. They are very tough stories. Lots of people have stories that we would cringe at initially until they craft them into beautiful stories of wisdom and learning. And that actually is the next reason to tell your tough stories. Telling those stories, to leverage those stories, is amazing because you get to learn the truth. So what does that mean? Taking that story and getting it out of your head and onto paper and eventually in a spoken word, when you do that, you bring to light that hard-won wisdom that you've learned. You might not have remembered it because it happened in the past, but as you're getting that story out, you're uncovering the hard things of life. You're digging into the dirt and really revealing that ugly side of life, and that is incredibly healthy. As human beings, we have a huge capacity for pulling the wool over our own eyes. We ignore those red flags. We just slog through the muck and the mire of our lives, simply getting by. And you know what? Raise your hand if you've done this. You're saying, I can handle this. I can handle that. Oh yeah, I can handle that. We all do that to some extent or another. But a better solution is to recognize these stories and then release them. So what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to utilize that wisdom that you've learned, but you haven't necessarily implemented yet. And when you do that, you actually create a resilience and a joy that defies the boundaries of your experiences. And it's just a thrill when you start doing that. And I want you to gain power over your tough stories. So how exactly does that happen? Well, when we experience trauma, those memories are actually stored in a different part of your brain than other memories. So they hide from you at first. But when they're triggered by maybe a smell or a piece of music or somebody saying something, they come back as vivid reality. How you gain power over them is to write out your stories and then tell them and see those stories for what they really are. And when you're doing that, you manipulate the words, you find out the truth, and you can have some self-compassion for what you've gone through. Those memories start to settle in that normal part of the brain where memories are regularly stored, so they can fade just like regular memories. They no longer hurt you. And one of the best ways to do this is to free write, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Life storytelling actually transforms the person who tells it. You are going to come away with a new understanding of yourself and a new appreciation of your past. Telling your stories means you really, it's like you expand your world and you experience your past in a more meaningful way, and one that brings joy to your future. Story is actually a natural part of life. And as you start getting these stories out of your head, it's going to become easier and easier to share them with others. The author of the book Wired for Story, her name is Lisa Cron, and she says a good story can cause the brain to release dopamine. And she also says a powerful narrative is able to help listeners gain empathy by relating to the protagonist. Now that's you. And it allows readers to step into the place of the protagonist and feel what they feel as they go through the story. It allows people to be more sympathetic with the situation. Wow. A way to share your story that other people will understand and they'll feel right along with you. And that's why we tell a story. I love, love, love this quote. It says, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." So you are going to awaken such amazing and deep knowledge that you never knew, but it's in there. It's inside of you when you tell your stories and get them out. Now, there's no perfect formula to create a perfect plan for each life story. Each one, your story is so unique. It's one for you. The story for you is what makes sense for you and your talk, and it accurately shows the goal of your story. Remember, unique is good, just like every life is unique. There's no one size fits all template. But you are the person who will know what feels right for your own story and what's right for your own presentation. And we'll talk about that here shortly. So the third reason to tell your tough life stories is that it turns them into beautiful works of art and resilience that others can learn from. You are going to produce the most beautiful works of art with your words, I promise you, even if you're not a storyteller. And most of all, I've already mentioned this, you're going to produce resilience. And this last reason is not just lifting up your story and calling attention to it, but it's also sharing it so that other people who hear your story can use your experiences to heal and learn and grow. Sharing your story not only gives you a way to let others join you in your own walk, but also assures everyone that they are not alone in their journeys. And that's what makes a good presenter. It touches the people who are listening. It touches their hearts. So you've got to enhance those tough stories and turn them into beautiful works of art and resilience. You also find your story in your stories, and you allow others to find theirs. When you teach the lessons in your story, that resonates. And here's what I tell my students. Wouldn't you want to share your story and have someone hear it who is just about to go through what you went through, or who's in the midst of going through what you've been through? What you're doing by sharing your story, the lessons that you've learned, and etc., is you are giving them a shortcut through that pain. You're teaching your lessons, and it can be very, very short. I love, love, love this because when you give someone else a shortcut, you are shortcutting their pain. They might not necessarily go through the pain that they're about to experience because they heard you speak about it. And that's just a beautiful thing. All right, so I want to know, please put in the chat box, do you have a life story that you'd like to tell? And just say yes or no, or if you want to share like a potential topic or something, that would be amazing also. But do you have a life story in mind that you'd like to share? And so if so, go ahead and put it in the chat, and that way we'll know if you are up for telling your life story. Oh, Colleen says yes, and she shared it. Yes, Colleen. Actually, Colleen is a wealth of experience. I loved it when you shared yours, but also that might not be the time that you're talking about. But it actually transforms other people, and it's just really a cool thing. All right. And maybe you have a life theme. You know, when I was starting to write my stories and being able to tell it to a small group of people, I found my life theme. And by digging into my stories, I realized that, oh my goodness, I had a life theme that I didn't like. I didn't raise my hand. And I didn't raise it all through childhood, through adulthood, until I was like 44, 40, maybe early 40s. And I finally started raising my hand. But when you start telling your stories, when you start seeing that wisdom that you've learned, you can say, wait a minute, I want to change my life theme. I don't like this life theme. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So we talked about easy ways to share that I'm gonna give you, and my very, very favorite way to share is to free write. So how do you do that? You start with your pen on a piece of paper or your fingers on a keyboard. So there's a lot of people that say, oh, you have to write by hand. It actually is very, very helpful if you do write by hand. But I think faster than I write, much, much faster, and I type really fast. So the way I did it was just by typing. So with free writing, what you're doing is just thinking about a pivotal moment. We talked about a pivotal moment several slides ago. Think about one pivotal moment in time. And what you're going to do is you're going to set a timer, maybe 10 minutes at first, but eventually get to 20, or if you can get to 40 minutes, wow, that'd be great. But don't discourage yourself. Just start with 10 or even 5 and start writing with abandon. Have that pivotal moment in your mind and just start writing whatever comes to your mind. Don't think about punctuation, capitalization, misspelled words. Don't stop for anything. Just keep writing. And when you do that, your brain's going to say, wait a minute, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. Let's stop. You got to go to the grocery store. I think we need some milk and bread. And so you're going to go ahead and write, I can't think of anything to write about, or I need to go to the store and get milk and bread. And you're going to keep writing. Don't let your pencil stop. Don't let your fingers stop. Continue writing no matter what comes out of your head. Don't pause at all. And eventually your brain's going to run out of that junk. It will. It promise you it will. And when you do, you are going to get some golden nuggets of your stories. There are things hidden in there that your brain is hiding from you that you have no idea about. And you will be surprised and thrilled to find out that you have some really golden nuggets in there. So with free writing, what you're doing is you're excavating that tough stuff and the wisdom you've learned, but you haven't yet implemented. And so this is the gem that you're going to start uncovering. Yes, it's raw, it's vibrant, it's filled with life, it's ugly, and it's beautiful as well. Now, this gem, you're going to polish it as you prepare to share your story. But for now, just embrace that gem because it's you. It's your history, your emotions, the knowledge, the experience, and it represents your purpose and your future and the impact you're going to make on the world. So free writing is just amazing and helps you excavate that gem that's you. So don't get discouraged. Just start with 5 or 10 minutes. Write and write with abandon. Don't stop. Write even if you're distracted. Just write what you're distracted about and get back to that that moment in time that you're talking about. And I'm talking about one moment, like 1 minute or 5 minutes. Think about, not about this time when I did XYZ. What did it look like? Were you sitting in your grandmother's kitchen and she had a formica table and you smelled the fried chicken or whatever that is? Use your senses. What did you smell? What did you hear? What did you taste? What did you touch? What did you see? What were the colors? Write all of that in just partial sentences and in half sentences and just get it out of your head. Because what that will do is that's going to take that ugly jumble of words, get it out of your head, and then you can craft a beautiful story. So when you're done free writing, and you can do this, you should do this over several days, and then let it stew for a little while in your mind, and then do another couple of days. And what you're going to do is take those words, that's the foundation, because when you just start writing, you're going to write a story. Not even Hemingway did any, like even Hemingway started by free writing. All great writers do. And it's because you're just getting that foundation laid. And that's really amazing. You're going to start crafting those stories later into fascinating tales. And you're going to mine your stories for what they can teach you and apply to your future. And you can gain insight into those stories and your identity and your purpose, but not yet. And so if you skip this part, your story is not going to be as amazing as it possibly can. So for me, the healing came when I just got that jumbled stuff out of my head and it was ugly. And then I did another pivotal moment in my life, and I took another pivotal moment in my life and another pivotal moment, and I started seeing actually a thread of my life theme and a thread of what was going through there. And I'm like, wow, I never knew that until I did the free write. Then what I did was take that words and start pulling the little threads out and crafting a beautiful story. But it was not as beautiful a story as, it wouldn't have been as beautiful a story if I hadn't have free written first. So when I return to those pages, I get to look also at my story through the eyes of someone hearing my story rather than living or being trapped in it. So you're getting it out of your head so you can look at it with older, wiser eyes and with a little bit more understanding and self-compassion. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And that's what Megan said. She's like, I got a deeper understanding and more powerful knowledge that will make me stronger. And so getting those stories out of your head is amazing through free write, the first step. Now, whoops, I don't want to do that. What I want to say is that your story is valuable. Listen, you might think, oh, my story is not as bad as somebody else. You might say, nobody wants to hear what I have to say, but they absolutely do. And the other thing is, your story is beautiful. Remember when I said your story, it's a work of art? So if your story were a sculpture, by free writing, you'd have unearthed that rock, and you'd have also then carved away at the shape, creating a polished work of art. So would you leave that work of art sitting in your closet, or would you share that beauty with the world? So think of how much more impactful your story will be than a sculpture. And so this means elevating your story so that others can use your experiences to heal and learn and grow. Now, these are all books. These are some of the top 100 memoirs of the last 200 years that I've collected. And I did a little research project on what are those top 100 memoirs of the last 200 years. And these people all have in common that they are human beings just like you. And they had some tough experiences in their lives, and they chose to share their pain. Some during their tough experiences, some years or decades later, but they all chose bravery. They chose themselves. They chose to dig into their stories, and they all wrote through their pain. Now, free write, that is that first easy way. I'll tell you what, this is like if you abandon all those grammar rules, this is so easy. It's just writing junk out of your head, and it's really cool. So the next way to share your story and tell your story is to open your presentation with your story. So listen, you showed up here for a reason, and I'm really, really glad you're here. So the next way to share your story easily in your presentation is to open with it. So here's why. When you share your story, especially when in the opening of the presentation, you bond with that audience. If the story that you choose to share in the beginning connects with your audience and resonates with your audience, they are going to sit up and they are going to listen and go on this journey with you throughout the rest of your presentation. And when you have an engaged audience, wow, you feel that power, and you feel that you get that feedback, and it makes your presentation so much more exciting. Now, here's the thing. You have to know how much time you have, and your opening story has to be incredibly short, like 3 to 5 minutes. And I'll tell you what, the company that I work with actually has a speak off, and they teach people how to tell their stories in just 3 or 4 minutes. And they have all these big presenters and these all kinds of folks, and they judge these presentations. And at first I saw them, I'm like, no way, there's no way they're going to get an entire story with lessons learned inside of 3 to 5 minutes. But they do. And so I'm going to challenge you, once you've done a lot of free writing, take one moment in time that represents your story and see how far under 5 minutes you can get it. Really, I'm serious about this. And what this does is you're going to share in that story how ordinary you are. You're going to share how like the audience you are. I was once in your shoes, or I was once, depending on what type of conference you're at or what type of presentation you're giving, you want to make sure that you know how the audience knows that you are just like them. If you don't, they're going to say, oh, I can't pay attention to what she's saying because she's so much better than I am, or she's so much bigger, or she's so much whatever. So you really want to resonate with the audience by sharing your story and showing that you are ordinary. You are just like them. However, if you're just ordinary, they're not going to pay attention to you. They're like, well, if she was divorced and, all of this, then she hasn't learned any lessons, then why am I even listening to her? So you also have to build into that 5-minute or less story how you are extraordinary. The lessons that you have learned, you have overcome this drama or trauma. You have done something more than what they have done. So you're going to have to show you're ordinary and you're extraordinary. And then right after that, you're going to share your why. And so my why in sharing my story, it's not all about, like, my entire presentation isn't about being married to a sociopath or escaping a sociopath. My entire story is about teaching and helping you tell your story. But the reason I tell my story at the very beginning is that it can resonate. And I always say, I want to give the folks in front of me a shortcut through the pain and teach, then I can teach them why. And so you've got to show when in your story, show that you're ordinary, show that you're extraordinary, and share your why. All right. The third way that you can share your presentation easily is to close your presentation with your story. So now, ordinary folks, when they go and speak and all that sort of thing, they have a call to action at the end, right? They close their story with a call to action. Hey, come see me at the back of the room, or I'd love to chat more with you, or go to my website, yada, 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 all of that. Great presenters actually close their presentation with a story beyond that. And when you do this, you are going to co-opt folks, their emotions, the people who are listening to you, to that presentation. You're going to start it off with an emotion. You're going to take them along for the ride, because you're going to bring some things into the middle of the presentation as well. But you're going to close with another heart-based story. This one could be yours. It could be somebody else's that you know of, but something related to your topic, of course. And when you do, you're going to bookend your presentation and really make it shine. And so I always recommend closing your presentation with another story. Again, it's going to be very, very short. You don't want to drag this on. You want to make it very short and concise and heartfelt. So at this point, I see you have two options. So option number one is you don't make a plan to unleash your stories, and you just continue giving the same presentations. And this time next year, you are going to be doing the exact same thing with that record playing in your head. And you're going to keep your hard-won wisdom from yourself and from others. And you're going to stay confused about your stories. Now, option number two, you commit 100% to getting those stories out of your head and growing more resilient, burying that shame and that trouble and that heartache for good, and leveraging that past and being able to not cry or not just get those emotions out ahead of time with your free write, to be able to calmly and impactfully share your stories. I would love for each one of you to be able to do that. So let me know if you are ready to do that as well, and if you want to get started. When you do this, when you get started doing your getting your stories out, you are going to give yourself permission to uncover your wisdom and to be able to share your amazing superpowers as well. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to allow for some time for questions about telling your tough personal stories without guilt or without shame. And so, Karen, I will allow you to, if you want to, see if there's any questions, and we'll let some folks put it in the chat.
Hi, everyone. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer or the chat.
That's right. There's a Q&A box at the bottom, and it looks like two little bubbles. You can ask them there or in the chat. That's good.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing this. I have to say that the reason I joined this organization was to tell my story. I didn't feel I possibly could. Mm-hmm. I was scared. I was ashamed. I felt that the only thing was I was the worst person in the world and no one would want to hear it or listen. And then I walked into a room terrified, absolutely petrified. And for the first couple of weeks, I would go to this room and I would smile, nod, shake my head. Occasionally, I'd throw a grunt at somebody's way because I really did not want to speak out.
Uh-huh.
You know, that complete, absolute shame.
Yes.
And over the course of a few weeks in a supportive environment, I learned not only how to tell my story, but how to connect to people and how to utilize what had happened in my past to be a stronger presentation, to work better in my business, to work better in my personal life, and even have more conversations with my family.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons that we are doing these webinars to educate people on some of these things is because we have an organization that helps. And it helps in a very supportive way. And that is Toastmasters. And that was the room I walked into. And I believe you walked into that same room as me about a year later.
I did. It was just really
met.
amazing. And you know what? It is a little scary at first, but you know what? One of the things that I found in telling my story is having a safe place where there is no judgment. Like seriously, like totally no judgment from the folks in Toastmasters. And I've seen people go from, shaking and nervous and their voice shakes. At one point I used to, stood up and did some training. Oh gosh, it's been years ago when I first started. And I gave a 2-hour training in just 20 minutes because I was so nervous and talking so fast. And what this did for me, what Toastmasters did, was really help me to be able to pace, to be able to get this out in a safe space, to get used to presenting. And like you said, I love that you said you can talk to your family. I'm like, it really helps in every single area of your life, not just work, although that helps as well. Helps you at work, helps you be bolder, calmer, wiser, and you look like you're more reasonable when you can speak well. And I'll tell you what, one of the secrets that I have found is anybody can do it. So if anybody is out there saying, oh yeah, they can do it, but not me, I'm here to tell you, anybody can learn how to do this. It seriously is amazing.
Stacy, we have a comment in the chat. If you want to take a look at the comment.
Yeah, Colleen says, I totally relate. And my problem is sometimes when telling my story, I come to tears. And that's why I'm telling and writing my stories for my children to understand the path I walked. I even used to hate when others told me how strong a woman I am. I can relate. Sometimes I wish to be taken care of and not be strong. But who am I kidding? Too independent for that. You know what? That is so common. So here's the thing. The very, very first thing I mentioned was when you write, you heal. And when you write this stuff enough and your brain is releasing it, you will slowly come to the realization that you don't need to have those tears and or that shame or that difficulty. So if you tell it enough and you start by writing to yourself, start by getting that out and out of your head. And when you start to heal, you will really start to think, wow, I have come a long way. And it won't be a source for tears. Now, occasionally, do I tear up? Yes, I tear up sometimes at the point where I talk about my girls and me not wanting them to get into that tough relationship as well. But you know what? That just kind of adds. There have been times in the beginning when I just couldn't, I seriously was like, I can't do this. But when you do it enough and when you practice enough, that's the thing also, is practicing it in a safe environment. At first, just in front of the mirror, just practice in front of the mirror, and then in front of friends or family, in front of your local Toastmasters group. Very, very safe. I mean, you will, the nice, really amazing thing is you're going to find people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, I had a similar experience. Oh my gosh, you've inspired me. Or I've had this that's kind of related to that. And you will find a community of people that will come alongside you and say, this is just amazing. Thank you for sharing. And that's just a great feeling.
Stacy, we did have a question about when you free write and you get all that stuff on paper or typing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know on typing how you can ignore those little red squiggles, but anyway, when you have all that data, how do you pare it down into a 5-minute story? Is there a tip or a trick for that?
Great question. So what I do with my students is I actually take them through a 3-list exercise. And I'll just tell you the 3 lists really quick. One is a list of the most pivotal moments in your life. Start with I was born. I graduated college. I, got a divorce, got married, had kids. What are some pivotal moments? The moment I realized when, I was just humiliated in front of the whole school, whatever those moments are, just make a list. Don't write about it, just make a list. The next one is a list of conflicts that you've had in your life, like this versus that, like money versus spirituality, family versus work. What are those types of things? See if you can make a list of those. And then a list of desires you've had in your life. I desired early on in life to have a husband and have kids. I desired to have a college degree and I couldn't at first. I mean, I was prevented actually from going to college, but that was a strong desire. So make a list of your desires. And what you want to do is you want to look through, and this is going to be, not just a one sit down. You're going to start the list and put them on the kitchen counter and let them marinate for a couple of days, add some more things to it, maybe over 2 weeks even. And when you start to do that, you're going to start seeing some things that are on 2 lists or maybe all 3. And that is the point where you start. And so you start free writing, getting all that junk. You're going to free write multiple days in a row, maybe multiple days in a row, and then skip and do another free write on another pivot point, then come back to it. When you have all of that junk, and especially if you do, if you start writing about what did I see, smell, hear, taste, touch, all 5 senses, plus how did you feel? When you write all of that down, you're going to start getting a story out of there. And you're going to start, that story is going to start formulating. So get it all out first. And when you do, then you're going to say, wow, it looks like I can tell this story about X, Y, and Z. Or I'll tell you the story that came out of mine was I didn't stand up for myself. I never did. And so I was telling those stories of the different moments in my life, and that is where I started my story. I did not stand up for myself. And so it kind of forms itself when you get enough of that junk out of your head. And then you can use the rest. You can save it, keep it, because they like little snippets, like some of the little sentences or partial sentences that I wrote. I'm like, wow, that's a great turn of words, So I might pull that out. And then it also has to relate to, like, you're going to have multiple stories. You're going to do this multiple times with multiple stories. It needs to relate to the topic that you're speaking out about and the lesson that you're going to teach inside of your talk. So maybe use one story for one particular presentation, but a different story for a different presentation. And I can't teach you how to pare it down into 5 minutes in this presentation, but it is absolutely doable.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And I want to thank you, Stacy, for presenting tonight. I feel like I have a lot of writing to do. I don't know about the rest of you, but it sounds like something that needs to be added to my list this weekend.
It is my joy to share this information. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Karen Hewitt, who is our Club Growth Director for District 3 Toastmasters. And Karen, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing. I'm always in awe when you speak because you are able to calmly talk about your past and use those lessons that you've learned to impact so many topics, whether it be from business to personal to motivation to family.
Yeah.
And I know for myself personally, I had to join Toastmasters in order to learn to have my voice.
Yeah.
Once you free write, you then need to, and you start to establish that gem that is your story, the gem that Stacy was talking about. It is always a good thing to get to a supportive group of individuals that are going to help you, guide you, and cheer you on to creating your presentation. Especially if you were like me, who's very terrified that first day, and you're not sure how you can communicate it. So the next thing we want to do is we want you, invite you to look at the local organization, the Toastmasters, and look at the clubs that we have and join them. Just visit. See if maybe this is an environment that you can flourish in telling your stories, if you can feel supported. The nice thing is we have clubs all over the state of Arizona that meet on different days at different times. And should you go to a club and you visit and you're like, you know what? I think I can flourish here. I can see the support. I can see that guidance. We're going to invite you to join that club. Now, I'm going to be straight up front and let you know how much the clubs cost, because everyone's like, oh my goodness, how much am I going to pay? The main dues for Toastmasters International is just $45 for 6 months. That's $7.50 a month for the Toastmasters International. Some clubs, depending on where they meet, they may have some club dues, but they will go over all that with you in detail. As well as you join a club after listening to this webinar, you just need to email us at membership@aztoastmasters.org and say, hey, I did it. I took the plunge. I joined a club. I'm so excited to be part of such and such a club. And we would check that you were on our webinar and that you joined, and we would send you a vintage t-shirt that was on that sign up page. And sorry, my dog's just decided to announce that someone was walking by the house. This is life right now, isn't it? We're just all at home doing what we need to do. So I want to invite you to join and look at one of our Toastmasters groups. See if this is something for you. See if you can establish your story. See if you can grow with us. And if you want to be someone who is mentored, taken in, and supported throughout this journey, I can guarantee this is the organization. It has done so much for me and so many others that I'm passionate about this too. And I'm passionate about the stories, how we tell them. And look, Stacy even said this has transformed how she tells her story. And you have to admit, she told an amazing story tonight about her life and how you can use that to better yourselves. So again, thank you so much, Stacy. And thank you everyone for coming. We'd also like to invite you to attend our next webinar, which will be in a month. And we'll be sending out the details, and it'll be about, what do you do when you're put on the spot? I mean, someone calls on you and you're like, I don't know the answer to that. Well, if the cat's got your tongue, you're going to want the next webinar, because it's going to teach you 3 ways to get through being put on the spot and to develop that skill. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you all. Have an amazing evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.